The last video completed the lab setup where we created not only the domain controller but also server 1, server 2, and storage. Now if we click on domain controller, you'll see that we only have the one internal switch. If we click on server 2, you'll see that we have the internal switch as well as a private switch. Server 2, we have the private switch and internal switch. And storage 1, we only have the internal switch. This video is going to go over lab 1, which is configuring network load balancing. We're going to be working with all 4 of these machines, and we're going to install and configure a network load balancer, create and configure the network load balancer cluster, configure the DNS, configure cluster properties, and then manage the cluster nodes. The estimated time for this lab is approximately 85 minutes. However, that may be shortened depending on how quickly it takes to install the network load balancer. So we're going to get started by first turning on our domain controller. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. Okay, so we're going to turn on start our domain controller, and we're going to be starting with server 1, so I'm going to also start server 1. And I'll log into both. Alright, I went ahead and I booted up, or started, the domain controller, server 2, and server 1. So we're going to go ahead and log into each one of these as the administrator. Now I'm not going to need the domain controller for this exercise, so I'm just going to minimize this. I just wanted to sign in. So I'm going to move server 1 over here and log in as administrator. And log in as administrator on server 2. And we're going to right click on the adapter, go and open Network and Sharing Center. Here's where we're to configure the private switch. We're going to go ahead and change adapter settings, or you can simply select Ethernet 2, Properties, Properties, and we're going to add IP address. And then we're going to go ahead and click on OK, and close, close, close. Now I'm going to go into server 2, go into the properties, And again, we're going to click on Ethernet 2, Properties, IPv4, 192.168.1.71, tab, and then OK, and close out of this. And I'm going to minimize Server Manager here and minimize Server 2. So back on Server 1, we're going to go into Server Manager, we're going to click on Manage and add roles and features. Next. 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 Next, and we're going to select Network Load Balancing, which is a feature. And then Add Feature. Next, and Install. And then we're going to follow that same procedure on Server 2. Manage, add roles and features. Next, 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 next. Again, we're going into features and go down to network load balancing, add features, next, and install. I'll go ahead and minimize Server 2 and flip back to Server 1. Now the next thing we're going to do is create a network load balancing or NLB cluster. I'm going to pause the video and then we'll pick it back up once this is finished installing. Installation has completed. We're going to go ahead and click on Close from here and click on Tools and Network Load Balancing Manager, and we are going to right click, new cluster, and in the host text box here we're going to type in server 01 and connect. Go ahead and click on next. Okay, we need to click back because I forgot a step. We need to select Ethernet 2 here, and then we're going to go ahead and click on Next. And then Next, and add. And then we're going to type in this IP address, 192.168.1.65, tab, and then OK. And here we're going to go ahead and click on Next. And then full internet name, we're going to type in web.contoso.com. We'll leave it default at unicast, and next. We're going to take a look at here are the port rules. We click on edit just to open them up. We're not going to do anything, but let's just take a look. So here we have our current port rule. And then we're going to click finish. Now we're going to add a second node. So to do that, I'm going to right click onto webcontoso.com and choose add host to cluster. And now we're going to type in server 02 and then connect. Again, make sure you have Ethernet 2 selected, and then next. And then under add host to cluster, we're going to go ahead and click on next. And here we're going to do finish. Okay, now we have both server 1 and server 2 as being converged. Okay, so now that we've got both the server 1 and server 2 converged, that's going to be the end of that exercise. The next exercise, we're going to go ahead and we're going to configure the DNS. So we're going to minimize this for now, and then open up the domain controller. And we're going to go into Tools and DNS. Keep in mind we had already installed the DNS during the setup, so it's already been installed. And we are going to expand the RWDC01, which it already is, and expand the forward lookup zones. And then we're going to click contoso.com and then right click. Here we're going to do new host, A or AAAA. And then here we're going to type in name is WEB for web. Under IP address, type in 192.168.1.65. We're going to create associated pointer, a PTR record, and then click add host. Okay, the host record web.contoso.com was successfully created. We're going to click on OK, and then done. And then we're going to right click on contoso.com again, and new alias. And then we're going to type in www. Fully qualified domain name for target host. It's going to be web.contoso.com, and then OK. And that is the end of that exercise. We'll go ahead and close out of the DNS manager. The next exercise, we're going to go ahead and do a configuring of cluster properties. So here we're going to redefine the port rules for only the ports that we're going to be needing. And we're going to go back to server 1. we're still in the Network Load Balancing Manager. We're going to click on the, we've already selected on the webcontoso.com. And we're going to right click and go into Cluster Properties. And we're going to go into Port Rules. And we're going to click on the current rule and click on Remove. And then Add. I'm going to change the protocols to TCP and change the port range from 80 to 80. And then Add. And then Add again. And we're going to do 443 to 443. Again, TCP. And then OK. And then OK. And that is the, actually let me go ahead and do F5. And you'll see that they are both converged. Okay, this next exercise we're going to manage cluster nodes. And again, we are still going to be working on server 1. And we are still in Network Load Balancing Manager. This time we're going to click on server 1 and right click and go into Control Host, and then we're going to select Drain Stop. You'll see how that's been affected over here. Host is stopped. You'll see how it turned red, and we're going to do that again. Right click, Control Host, Start. See how it goes back into pending. It's yellow. Go ahead and do F5. And now we have enabled again. So now I'm going to do Stop, Control Host, and Stop. And then right click, Control Host, Start. And I just did F5 and now we've got them being enabled again. And that is the end of that exercise. Okay, now that we've added clusters, we are going to remove these clusters. So still on server 1, still in the Network Load Balancing Manager, we're going to go ahead and right click, actually I'm going to left click, and then right click the webcontoso.com, thank you, and go down and do Delete Cluster, and do Yes. And then close out the Network Load Balancer. And then click OK. And then go into Server Manager. This time we're going to go into Manage. And then remove roles and features. And then Next. And Next. And Next, and we're going to scroll down and deselect the network load balancing. And next, and then remove. And we're going to go to server 2 and remove it from there as well while we're waiting for that to finish. So again, I'm on server 2, so I'm going to go into remove roles and features. Next, next, next. And then we're going to need to reboot both of these. So we're going to reboot both the server 1 and server 2, and that is the end of lab 1.